in Seattle with a fever of like 103 and some change. So, whoever of you came up to me and was like, "Are you okay? You look like you're about to faint." And I said, "I'm great. I'm fine. I'm healthy and capable." Apparently, I lied right to your face. So, thank you so much. It's wonderful to see everybody. This is Adrian. Adrian put together this slideshow for us. So all of these graphics and helpful maps, all praise be to the king because he did this, not me. And both of us are here to answer questions. I'm so excited to go over this report with y'all. Is that cool? Coolio. Okay, so I have to, and we are recording. Yes, we're recording. Great. I'm going to share my screen. Yeah. I do this for a living, and every single time it's a full process to do this correctly. All right. So present. Beautiful. Can everyone see this all full screen and beautiful? Excellent. So, hello. This is a report about the survey that we sent out earlier in the year after the retreat. If you took that, thank you so much. You have accomplished a ton in a really short amount of time. And I really, really want to like keep praise and emphasize on that. So like you've grown your participation from 17 all the way up to 39. And that was at the time that we were writing the report. So that might have changed even by now. Your coalition representation grew from 14 to 31. You've been facilitating really generative, supportive, and helpful relationships amongst yourselves and between your participation. You developed a charter and a statement of purpose. You've been sharing very relevant, useful, and applicable information at your meetings, which is very hard to do across Zoom and over the course of the worst parts of a pandemic. And you distributed almost 17 grand in stipends and grants. So in a very short amount of time, you've been doing a lot of really excellent, superb work and gotten a lot done. And you should really give yourselves a round of applause for that. Big claps on the back. This is super impressive. So this is just a really quick snapshot of geographic representation, who is participating in the ECN. So in blue, you can see where people who took the survey are from, and then in green, you can see where people are from of the whole of the ECN participation. I am going to be using the word participants a lot to talk about membership and affiliate members. Just because that captures everyone who's involved. So that distinction between people who are members who have filled out the MOU and all these other things is sort of captured in there. It just makes it easier to tell what I'm talking about. Also, if at any point you think I'm talking too fast because I'm too excited, you are very welcome to be like, hey, slow it down. It's okay. Promises? Cool? Great. Excellent. So we have pretty robust survey responses here. So we're pretty confident that the survey results are generally representative of how the ECN and its participants feel generally. The only caveat that I would add to this is that overwhelmingly the folks who answered the survey participate in the ECN as part of their paid job. So if we're showing some of these results and you're thinking, oh, that doesn't really apply to me, or like, I don't know that I would say that, and you do not participate in the ECN as part of your paid job, that's probably why, because your cohort's a little bit underrepresented in the sample. This is just some demographic information. So overwhelmingly, the folks who answered our survey identified themselves as women. And this language of "are you a member of a historically marginalized or disenfranchised community" is really broad, overbroad, all-encompassing language. But we did that because any more detail becomes too identifying for the individual person who answers the survey. So at the expense of some kind of clumsy language, we were able to report a little bit about this information while still keeping people's responses anonymous, which is important. Okay, So this is super interesting. So nearly 60% of our survey respondents reported that they did not attend ECN meetings regularly. This is really interesting because in later slides, we will see that survey respondents also really feel that these meetings are really good uses of their time, but still weren't able to participate regularly or as much as they would like to. Okay. So this is a section about supporting meaningful connection. Most of our survey respondents agreed or strongly agreed the ECN introduced them to people and organizations outside of their community, which is, again, really cool. So here you have most people sharing that they have made connections with folks outside of their community due to the ECN. We also have most people sharing here that they feel that they understand the relationship between the work that they do in their home communities and the works that other people are doing in their communities, which is also really cool. And most people who are pretty comfortable reaching out to and connecting with other ECN participants to check in or work on projects or collaborate together. So again, this is super cool. This is not a particularly old or established group. So this level of confidence in results and just being connected and facilitating relationships that might not have happened otherwise is a really big deal, even though it's it's just a graph. You know, this is a really big deal and you should be really proud of yourself. This is super cool. Someone has entered the waiting room. Um, Adrian, did you want to talk about the community-based stipend program real quick?
Sure. Yeah. So, for the community-based stipend program, we um, gathered the whatever data was available in your archive and computed that uh, and compiled them all together. So our understanding is there were only 2 years that the stipend program, there have been 2 years so far that the stipend program has been uh, provided. So in general, the what we found out is that the stipend program is a 1 year only funding opportunity that provides at least 500 to an organization, and it was designed to address each community's unique childhood needs and recognize your time and effort as well. Um, and in order to receive the stipend program, you have to be an official member of the ECN and have a fiscal sponsor organization. And you also needed to submit a funding plan, statement of goals and objectives, and a brief timeline. So, while what we found out was while this program was open to all ECN members, not all members participated in the opportunity, and the amount of stipends dispersed also varied. So in 2022, 9 member coalitions or organizations received a total of almost $13,000. And in 2023, only 2 member coalitions or organizations received a total of almost $4,000. And I believe this was due to a change in the funding and the priorities based on that funding. But yeah, uh, we could talk about it more later.
Thank you. Um, okay, so um, this is just a really quick snapshot of folks sharing the ways that they participate in the ECN and in regular attendance. So this is um, the roughly third of folks who agreed or strongly agreed. Sorry that strongly agreed didn't make it into the scale for some reason. Agreed or strongly agreed that they attend meetings regularly. And then this over here is showing ways that folks are participating. So overwhelmingly of folks who are participating, they're saying that they're participating through these monthly meetings, then the annual in-person meeting, and then about 10% less than that participating in the stipend opportunities. So this is about supporting meaningful connection, and this is really interesting. So regular meeting attendees are more likely to feel meaningfully connected to other members. And this makes sense because you're seeing each other once a month. You're doing your monthly check-in to see what you're doing. You're sharing the projects you've been doing. You're getting those updates. You're participating. But we really like to see this because this is a really clear indicator that these meetings are fulfilling like a really important network purpose of fundamentally facilitating those connections across vast distance of Alaska, and also connections between projects and different communities. So this is really cool. Um, Survey respondents who attended regularly were also more likely to feel comfortable reaching out to other participants. And we're also more likely to report ever independently reaching out and collaborating with another ECM participant outside of a designated meeting time. Um, this is something I'm also going to ask Adrian to walk us through again since he made this graphic for us. But this is a map, a representation of communication between members. So the larger the bubble, the more people listed this individual as someone in that they reach out to or could reach out to for more advice or information. So Adrian, did you want to talk about this and how you made it really quickly?
Yeah, definitely. Yes, if you remember, if you answered the survey, you may remember this question, where you're asked to list up to three members that you communicate with the most. And so we compiled all of those, all of your answers, and notated how many times a name was mentioned, as well as so that's the size of each circle, and the proximity is how often names were mentioned together when um when you mention more than one name in your answer. um, and so you could see here basically that a lot of members really communicate most frequently with these bigger circles here. And the colors also represent different roles that you all play in this in the ECN. And when the color is dotted, it means that they were former participants or former contractors of the ECN. So even though I probably when we sent this out, they were still very much in the mind of a lot of people, and very active still. So um, yeah, I could talk about it a bit more, um, if anyone has questions.
What I do think is really cool about this graph is it shows that the folks who are stepping into and on the advisory council, or the folks that people already had a habit of like going to and supporting. So natural leadership are the folks who are now on the leadership team, which is super cool. And also to see that Emily had such a continuing and lasting impact on things happening in the ECN is also super cool. Um, so this is really interesting. So in the section where we asked you about achieving the ECN's goals, um, this emerges as a space of like some ambiguity amongst our survey respondents. So in terms of when we ask like, hey, like, do you think that the ECN has enough material funding to achieve its goals? Most people didn't know or were unsure, hitting that neither disagree nor disagree space. And similarly, this is a pretty good amount of uncertainty or ambiguity around whether or not our survey respondents felt that the ECN had the people power to achieve its goals, whether or not together as a coalition, the skills, knowledge, and expertise needed to achieve what you need to achieve were already in the room with you. And it's really important for me to note again that this is a question about people's perceptions of access to resources. This is not a statement about what resources the ECN actually has. And so when we are looking at this question and we're seeing results like this that don't actually hit a very strong yes or no, but instead hit so much uncertainty, that actually indicates to us that there is a communication pathway that needs to be taken or developed in terms of either clearly articulating what the ECN's resources are so that you can make an evaluation about if we have the resources we need to achieve our goals. And also maybe clearly articulating what those goals are, because everyone involved in the ECN are very capable, deeply talented, established advocates, and so you have a lot of skills. But until that there's a clear articulation of what you're trying to do together as a team, maybe you don't know that your neighbor next to you has that bit of information or skill that you need, but didn't know that you had. So this is more indicative of a communication process, not necessarily indicative of what the actual resources are. Also, at any time, you may stop me for questions. Um, so similarly, we also found a lot of uncertainty around the ECN's decision-making processes amongst our survey respondents. So when we asked folks to tell us on a agree to strongly disagree scale about whether or not you felt that the decision-making processes encourage collaboration and participation, we also had a lot of uncertainty here. So just a little bit, slightly more than half, barely more than half, neither disagreed nor agreed. So there's just sort of an I don't know. But the other half agreed. And so when we look at the results from this question, especially in contrast with when we're asking, do you know and understand the ECN decision-making processes? And we have almost 40% saying that they disagree and another, nearly 40% saying that they don't know. Together, this was more of an indication that decision-making processes are actually unclear. So even though the decision-making process is meant to be by consensus where possible and then by simple majority in other instances, it came through that actually wasn't very clear. But even though that was not a clear decision-making process, this usually have a little purple, there's like a little spotlight thing. So I'm just moving my mouse, hoping you can see that. Sorry. But this question up here, what we think is happening is that folks were answering, reflecting how they feel when they are participating in decision-making conversations in meetings. And so while there's room for improvement, here, this is not giving an indication that our survey respondents felt that the general decision-making practices or conversation were like exclusive or not generative or are arbitrarily sort of shutting down contribution, which is something that we do like to see. Cool. It's so weird that I can't hear anyone. I have such a preference for in-person presentations for this reason. So communicating with members. Ooh,
I don't know. Can I ask questions during presentation?
please.
Yeah. Just on that last slide where you're talking about the ECN members' understanding of the decision-making process. It's maybe more of a statement than a question, but I don't know that I really recall like us making decisions. So maybe because that hasn't been enacted fully, that maybe that's part of the reason why we don't understand it because we haven't utilized it too much. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's very possible because it's hard to answer a question like this if the decision making process is sort of theoretical but not something that you feel you've had a chance to like practice or experiment with yet, or use and see if it serves you well. Thank you. So this section is about communicating with members, which is super interesting. And I understand there's been a lot of change even since we did the survey and wrote up the results. So these results might not resonate with y'all anymore. But back in February or March, when we were taking the survey, um, a lot of our survey respondents agreed or strongly agreed that the ECN communicates well with members. But despite that, less than half of our survey respondents felt that they knew where to go for information about the ECN. And that information can be broad. That information is things like what are our assets and resources, where's a directory of members, what are the skills and contact information for my neighbor sitting next to me, like what are our decision making processes and things like that. And overwhelmingly, in short response, when we asked for suggestions about ways that some of this communication infrastructure could be improved or built out, almost to a person, there was a suggestion of some sort of a website, a book, a carrier pigeon, like something, like a hieroglyph, anything to sort of centralize some of that information. So despite that, our participants really did report knowing how to contact other ECN participants, which is a little bit contradictory. If we had folks earlier saying, I'm not so sure I know how to contact everyone else in the ECN. So what we think is happening with this question of I know how to contact other people involved with the ECN when I need to, is we think that this 81%, this grand majority of folks who I'm so sorry. In between presentations, I must have done something because my color grading's a little bit off. But this blues are meant to indicate the agree scale. This over here is not correct. So please excuse me for that. This 81% of folks who agree or strongly agree that they know how to contact other people in the ECN. What we think is happening with this question is that people were thinking about like those top 3 people that they rock with and are in constant communication with on the ECN. And they're answering this question based on, well, I know how to contact, Red, Cassie, and Shannon. And so, yeah, I can contact these people. But not necessarily being able to contact anyone involved on the ECN whenever they need to. So there is a little bit of a distinction there. Generally, people found network co-facilitators to be responsive and easy to reach, and also generally found that the network's communication tools and mechanisms were effective. There is some room for improvement here, but this is fine. This is just tool development, so super cool. So for network advantage, which is our evaluative way of saying, like, are you getting more accomplished by working together than you would be if you were working alone? So most respondents agreed that attending ECN meetings was a good use of their time and that they learn useful things during the meetings. So again, like not a single person disagreed to any extent that the contacts and resources being shared at the ECN was relevant to the work that you're doing outside of the network. So the worst thing that people had to say was like, yeah, sometimes the content is fine. Like that's the worst thing anyone had to say, which is hard. That's really impressive. And again, there should be a big round of hand clapping and snaps for that. Similarly, and I find this incredible, and if I could, I would make you all gold medals for this. 100% of our survey respondents, so no one disagreed to any extent that attending the ECN was a good use of their time. No one who filled out our survey felt like attending ECN meetings was not a good use of their time. And again, that's very hard to do. It is very hard to develop a meeting system and agendas where every single time people are coming away and the worst thing they have to say is like, yeah, okay, I learned things half the time, half of that meeting. I learned things. Like that's the worst people had to say. That's pretty incredible. So this is something that high praise for being able to pull this off. About 2/3 of our survey respondents felt that the insight, skills, and information that they got from the network were highly applicable to their own work, which again is like really impressive, especially for how like young of an organization y'all are. And again, here, big medals, like seriously, like big claps, big medals, snaps, like hype yourselves up. This is really incredible. Everyone felt that these meetings were generative learning spaces at least some of the time. And everyone felt that at least some of the time they were coming away from these meetings feeling energized, rejuvenated, capable, and able to continue this work. And y'all are doing this over Zoom during COVID? Come on. Like that's incredible. That's really phenomenal, incredible work. So in a short response series of questions, we asked a couple of questions about how survey takers felt that the ECN was doing in terms of doing this work to elevate early childhood. And a couple of short responses that we wanted to highlight where someone shared that they felt that they were still unsure about how we are actually doing on a statewide level. I feel that we lack tangible projects and direction. Someone else shared that knowing what others are doing in the state is really helpful, although I haven't been able to utilize any of that information to elevate services myself. And finally, someone else shared that the ECN is new and still developing, but having a resource like this is a wonderful start for our state. So recommendations. Our first recommendation that we shared with leadership team and with your co-facilitators was to do some work to strengthen network infrastructure. And network infrastructure here is things like that single hieroglyph carrier pigeon network system, Hogwarts owl, whatever you need, to consolidate some of this information about the ECN and better facilitate communication between participants. This is also like consolidating some of that information around governance, so decision making, description of roles of the advisory team, of the co-facilitators, description of the resources available to the ECN, things like that in that same single source. A way that was floated in to introduce folks to all that information was maybe to put that into a new type of onboarding packet that had all that information together, along with developing a regular schedule for sending reminders and community updates about, hey, here's our next meeting, and also standardizing some processes for tracking attendance and other forms of offerings. Because for this year of the evaluation, we were only able to gauge attendance by asking about people's perception of their attendance rather than comparing that fully to an attendance log. Our second recommendation was to reconsider meeting dates and times to accommodate member availability. And there's, unless you have figured out how to schedule a meeting in some sort of like Doctor Strange pocket dimension, there is no way that you're going to find a date and a time recurring once a month where every single participant can attend. But we did get several comments saying that the date and the scheduling was the biggest barrier to participation, because again, we had everyone saying these meetings are great, I love them, I want to be there, I get something when I can go, but then saying I can't make it, I have work that's preventing me, or I have other care obligations are preventing me from going on this particular date. Rhett.
Yeah, so I wanted to add with the second recommendation that, beyond just knowing that it's impossible to schedule a meeting where 39 people can actually make it at the same time, that some of this may get mitigated once, we talked about having different themes or topics for meetings, but also once the ECN has direct goals and a statewide network plan of action, then we might get more buy-in from organizations and their administration to make ECN meeting attendance a priority. Because outside of direct service, it may be that, yes, you're at work and yes, you can go to these meetings, but you may have other work tasks that take priority. Unless your agency says, I see why you're doing this. I see why this is of value to your work. So let's make this a priority. Just a thought.
Nope, absolutely. Thank you. And Red, our third recommendation was to develop some more goals for the Early Childhood Network. So all of you here today, you have a really strong sense of shared purpose. Like you very much understand the urgency of elevating and promoting, building out, strengthening all of the systems supports that could ever at any point come into play for a very young child in early childhood development. Everyone understands that urgency and everyone is working really hard to achieve that. But some of the tangible goals for process and achieving elevation are a little bit unclear. So in your charter documents, the charter really clearly describes like the need for the ECN, the purpose of the ECN, and then the primary activities taking place. But the actual goals are not listed or articulated. So we felt that developing and further articulating some of these goals that lead to the elevation of early childhood would be really beneficial in terms of buy-in, feeling like you're making progress, understanding the power that you have as a collective, like all over the state as a network, and for increasing buy-in, as Red just shared. Yes?
I'm the worst. I mean, I'll come back to this topic anyway, but it's so interesting, Sophia, because you're doing this presentation and it's the first time I've realized how problematic when we throw around elevate early childhood, how problematic and wide that term is, because what does that even mean? And I think even talking about that when we're trying to create buy-in is strange. So I think once we get these goals down, we are defining what elevate looks like to all of us. So I don't know if anyone else is having a hard time with elevate. Not that I wanted to do the opposite, but just adding some spice to the day as always.
Yeah. Red, I'm just going to add to that. I remember coming into last year's retreat, and wasn't that the activity that we did was like, how do we elevate early childhood with the pictures, right? It was something around the word with elevate, but
You and Abby got to watch me have a mini heart attack because there was too much writing on all the walls.
yeah. So I totally understand, like, hear where you're coming from too. I don't feel like you're stirring the pot. I think that, of course, all of us are here and in early childhood, so we're preaching to the choir, but I think that semantics of the words are really important. And you're right, once we get some goals down, we can start to hone in on some of those the words that mean it all.
And our final recommendation that we gave was to consider re-envisioning the stipend program. And we're using the language of re-envision rather than sort of restructuring or thinking about application processes differently, just because there's once some of those goals are developed and some projects, local projects that you identify are then identify language. Once those things are put in alignment, there's a whole bunch of opportunity to develop some really strategic uses for the funding that the ECN has access to really push for some of those projects. Which is important and super neat. So the other thing that we were thinking about is that the stipends have been distributed really irregularly and in amounts that have been sort of variable. And it's been a moment since I was in all of those records, but I think one of those stipend amounts was for $500 or something. It was for it was for an amount of money that serves a very particular type of project or support for a project. But together you can determine what kinds of projects you want to be doing and think about strategic uses for those funds for extra projects. So a full re-envisioning is something that we recommend. And I'm also super excited to be able to be here during that process and to see what kind of structure that y'all develop. So I'm going to X out of this presentation. Are there any questions? It was a lot. There was so much. There's a lot more in the report, but in terms of like not just boring everyone to tears with chart after chart after chart.
Can I actually we have the advisory council who's going to share a little bit more about the recommendations and how we're going to move forward for that. So I'm going to turn it over. I believe Casey is going to share a little bit first about our our plan is for the recommendations.
Yeah, thank you. So part of addressing the strengthen the network infrastructure really has come out of the development of the Padlet. So thank you so much, Rianne and Shannon, for putting that together. So if you haven't gotten a chance to check out the Padlet, I know the last time we were all together, they did do some demos for us on the Padlet. It does look like Rianne put that link again in the chat box, so I highly encourage all the ECN members to hop on there. So it's a great spot in building out the infrastructure of what we're doing. It's a great spot to find individuals' contact information. The meeting agendas are also going to get posted in there. And then we're able to also, what I really like is the space where we can update some community updates and help build and strengthen that networking piece that we all really value from being part of the ECN. So the more engagement we get in that space, the stronger our networking is going to be. And then also the discussion space too, where we can just really ask questions of the general ECN. So through those different kind of spots with the Padlet, there's so much more there than what I've mentioned. But through those various avenues under the Padlet, that's really going to help strengthen the infrastructure of who we are as an organization.
Thank you, Casey. And then, Red, do you want to share a little bit about our goals for this year?
Oh, do I? You probably all have guessed how I answered on that survey about goals. And I wanted to let all of you know, during the advisory council meeting, we talked about, well, how are we even going to start with goals for the ECN? And the information we need to start to identify goals is already here in this report. I think, we can look at one of the goals moving forward as something like creating and maintaining a strong network of early childhood advocates statewide, right? Like just something that kind of tells our job. And we're already doing some of the work of that goal with the Padlet, with regular meetings, with streamlining some of that stipend program. So these goals are there, they're just under the surface, and we need to make the implicit explicit. And that's really what the advisory council will do, is help draft some goals to bring back to the ECN in general, so that we all have something we can talk about and be proud about and know that we have work to do. And so we're not just constantly in limbo of who are we? What do we do? Let's rethink this. Then once we get these goals, we can start identifying actions to go along with those goals. And then the people that are the hands in this group can really get to do the fun work. Another thing about these goals is that we know that they're not stagnant, right? We don't identify a goal and then that is it always. It's something that we will revisit annually, because the nature of the group and how we do the work may shift and will shift over time. So once we get this first round of goals done, it will just get easier and easier to review them, say, yes, we're still doing this, or yes, we're doing this, but here's how we're going to come about it next year. And that will be some of the work we get to do during our in-person meeting in the spring is look at the goals that we've identified and then say, these are the things that we can do as communities and as a statewide cohort to reach that goal. Rand, did I say that in a way that was as nice as the last time?
So perfect. You have your big presenter voice on.
Chef's kiss,
Nicely
everybody.
done. Good job. Thank you, Red. Chef's kiss. Bobby Joe, can you talk about our stipend program?
Sure. So the advisory council is working on allocating options for the stipend program and ways to use the ECN funds. As we talk about it and figure out how to use the funds effectively and equitably, as this develops more, the advisory council will share to the larger group. So more to come.
More to come. Thank you. And then that last, well, I think it was actually the second recommendation was to reconsider the meeting dates and times to accommodate member availability. And here we are in the afternoon on a Thursday instead of a Tuesday morning. So that was our first thing that we wanted to do. And we'll be visiting this every year as we get feedback from the group to say what has been working or not, and we can rethink our time for our meetings to best fit everybody, as many people as possible, at least in our meeting time. And I think just being able to record, thank you, Joan, again for reminding me, recording these meetings, I'm always forgetful on this. It helps people be able to connect back when they do miss a meeting, and just to hear the conversation. I love the community update opportunity for people to check in on that. But yeah, we'll continue recording these so that people can check in on it. So that's kind of our response to the recommendations. So that's kind of our focus for this year, in at least from the recommendations from the survey report from the Stellar Group. Are there any thoughts or conversation points or questions that you have from our focus or from the presentation? Excellent. Well, you know how to get a hold of us if you think about something later. Any of the advisory council or Shannon or myself, we're happy to connect. Also, you are free to connect with Sophia and Adrian. Sophia and Adrian, are there anything else that you had to share?
Nope, that about wraps it up unless anyone has questions. I do have I have the report pulled up. If anyone had any more detailed questions, I could answer that really quickly because it's pulled up. But it is it's the plan to have copies of the report available at the retreat if you wanted to flip through that, it's just in hard copy.
And Shannon actually sent out the report to everybody last meeting. So if you needed a reminder to where the report is, we did send it out, and we will post it on the Padlet as well for everyone to have access to. But thank you so much for that presentation and the beautiful graphics, Adrian. Looking at those, she's right. I would love to now turn over to Shannon, who's going to talk a little bit more about PDG opportunities.
Hey, thanks, Rand. Thanks, Sophia and Adrian. I just wanted to kind of follow up a little bit with ECN evaluation. I don't know if you haven't checked the Padlet out recently. I just want to let you know that everyone is using it great. There were discussion threads on different things. I think Red had a job opening on there. So, and that the last couple of meetings are up. So just to let you know, it's a great resource. So I think that's this was a big part of the recommendations that Stellar had. Along with some other things, we've started kind of a welcome packet. So as soon as we have that kind of put together, and we'll make sure we share that with everybody. We've talked about an early childhood network info card of some sort that you could have and share it with others in your community. So if you come up with some ideas, please share them. It would be awesome just to get some new stuff out. Anyway. So I asked if I could kind of do just a short presentation for the preschool development grant, birth through 5. I'm going to ask Bobby Joe if she wants to chime in on anything. We are both part of the preschool development birth through 5 leadership team, and we are finishing up year 2 right now, going into year 3. So I'm going to just share a PowerPoint. It's not too long, but I just wanted you guys to have a visual with some of the activities that fall within this grant. Let me just move my stuff around here. Okay. So this is a renewal grant. We are going into year 3. So it's happening really, really quick, coming up on this year, end of year 2. Just what is the preschool development grant? I think prior to it being under the Department of Health, Department of Ed had a preschool development grant. Like I said, we're going into year 3, and this is under the Every Student Succeeds Act, which in the past, I believe, was the No Child Left Behind Act. So that's where these funds are coming from, to improve quality and accessibility in early care and education for children, birth to age 5. So just so you know where this funding is coming from. These are some of the activities, the purpose of the PDG, to strengthen early childhood systems, prepare children for kindergarten, invest in early childhood care and education workforce, identify opportunities to expand access to high quality early childhood care and education, and last, support a comprehensive mixed delivery system. So I really look at this group and I see that mixed delivery, that we come from every part of early childhood in Alaska. These are the grant activities descriptions, and I'm going to look at Bobby Joe because I don't remember what we're going to focus on for year 3. I believe it might be the last 3 or 4 activities. So this is what we've been focusing on the past 2 years. We've updated the comprehensive early childhood needs assessment that is just being completed now. We are starting work on the early childhood strategic direction, so that is happening as we speak. Maximizing parent and family engagement, supporting birth through 5-year-old workforce, and best practice. So we know our workforce in early care and education, you know, that's something as a state we're working on. So these are funds that will help with that. Promote early childhood program quality improvement. And last but not least, provide subgrants to communities. And that's where Bobby Joe's been coordinating if you've heard of the innovation grant that was done through Thread. Was it last year, Bobby Joe?
Yes, it was last March is when the applications opened.
So do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I know we have some innovation grant members on here, or participants on this call.
Sure. The Child Care Program Office used several funding streams, a large one being the PDG grant monies to develop these grant opportunities for communities. It was a highly competitive application process, and it has gone out to 17 communities where recipients. The recipients were able to sort of discuss what their minimum need was, and they were awarded based upon that, and what the minimum and the maximum were. And we looked at that and awarded money for that. And we have been able to extend the deadline for spending the monies through December 2025. So that is great, or 2024. We are looking at future opportunities. So that's something we're going to be focusing on in this year 3.
Thank you. I just know it's been very popular and everyone talks about the innovation grant. And I know even Rianne's been hearing it during A2P2 partner meetings. So just to let you know that, yeah, things are looking really good towards that. And can I just ask, which slide are you guys seeing? Because I have 2 screens open. I just want to make sure you're seeing the right slide.
We see
We're looking at the grant activity descriptions.
Yeah, thanks, Rand.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, thanks. Okay, so I just wanted to give you some kind of an example of, these isn't all of them. We have, I don't know, millions of dollars out there right now in activities that around the state. This is just, I just pulled some examples from years 1 and 2, mostly year 2. Some of these will continue into year 3. But the Universal Developmental Screening Committee for Public Service. So if you see anything out there on developmental screening, PDG funds help pay for that. The Early Childhood Network, just to let you know this, we're trying to be transparent. This was one of the things we wanted to talk about is where does the funding come to help support the Early Childhood Network? And I can just tell you about 300,000 comes out of PDG to help support the network. Fan interaction training. This is a training that's done through CWA along with Strengthening Families. Those are 2 trainings that are happening that are funded through PDG. The community innovation grants. We are now doing the home visiting echo through UAA, which is being funded through UAA or through, I'm sorry, PDG. Reflective supervision work. So any of the infant, early child mental health or social emotional work that you probably are seeing around is funded through PDG. AIM has gotten some of that funding. We're working right now on the pyramid model. There's a leadership team out there working on the pyramid model, which is a social emotional model for classrooms, but also early childhood classrooms, infant learning programs, all of that. So we're trying to implement this in the state of Alaska. We have a few classrooms right now that are using it, but hoping to implement it more. So PDG funds are helping with that. And then just coming into year 3, which starts in January, after we've done this needs assessment, we're looking at that for gaps just to see where else, Alaska early childhood programs might be needing some of this funding, but also just we're trying to get an RFI or an RFP. We're not sure yet what it's going to be out here soon. And I just wanted to share it so that everyone knows it hasn't been, out there publicly as much the first 2 years, but that everyone is aware that this funding will be there for home visitors, for our most vulnerable population. It can go anywhere from what Bobby Joe, probably what 5,000, even less, up to 50,000, 100,000. So, just to let you know, really look for that. I will put this when we finally get the RFP, RFI, whatever it's going to be, I will put it on our Padlet. And then honestly, I'll probably send it out to you guys all so you have it and are aware of it. So I don't want you to miss out. Again, it's mostly just like a stopgap funding because we're only, we have 1 year left of funding, but it's something. And we just want to spread the wealth and get it to who needs it, the regions, the communities, those children and families. Anything to add, Bobby Joe?
Nope, I think you said it all.
Okay. So thanks, everyone.
Very exciting. I know that PDG funding through the innovation grant was huge. It has helped a lot of our programs here. Lots of really cool things happening across the state. So it's very exciting. I feel like we have like an inner circle informant. So nice. Thank you for sharing that information. I really appreciate it. Anybody else have anything? We've kind of wrapped up our presentations. Anybody have anything that's going on in their communities or things that they wanted to bring to the group to talk about? Brainstorm with the ECN?
Do you want to tell them, Rihanna, about the national?
Oh, yes, I
Conference
can.
next
That's a good idea. So, Help Me Grow is a national framework. And as you all are Help Me Grow community champions and know about the program quite a bit, very exciting to see how Help Me Grow has supported the families all across the state. Just this year, we alone have not just here, together now we have supported 5,000 clients. We just hit our 5,000 mark a couple weeks ago, which is very exciting. And so each year they do a conference, a forum. And so after COVID and everyone went virtual, they hosted a virtual forum, which was highly attended, and they decided to keep that along with the in-person forum. But the virtual forum this year, which happens in December, is talking about systems in early childhood systems in states that have been successful or have met the need of statewide members. And so I thought, hey, Sharon, that sounds like something we could submit for the Early Childhood Network. Let's try it. And so it was the last day that it was available. I submitted and proposed it to talk about what we do here at the ECN, and we got accepted. So we will be able to share about the wonderful group work that you all do here at the ECN and our great just like impact that we're able to make across the state at a national level. So I'm really excited to be able to share that. That session will be on December 10th. I'm hoping that we will, I believe we're recording it, so we will definitely share it on the Padlet once we're done. And we asked Red to help us out as an advisory council member to just be there and share her experience as an ECN member and what she's seen in her community with the ECN as well. So we're really excited to do that and just get to share outside of Alaska the cool things that we're doing here with the ECN. So very exciting. Well, I am so happy to have seen everybody today, all your faces. Our next meeting will be Thursday, November 14th. And 12:30. So thank you all for being here. Appreciate all the work you're doing and the conversations had. Please let Sharon and I know if you have any questions or need any support, or go to the Padlet. Don't forget to check out the Padlet. Thank you,
Yeah,
Sophia.
and
We
just
appreciate you
wanted to
all.
bring up, Brianne, that for the November meeting, we do have a presenter. It's Susan Kessler from Part C, from the Early Intervention State Office. And those of you in ILP that are part of ECN, you know, if you want to back Susan up, I let Susan know who you were, just in case. But I know during community meetings, interviews, we had a lot of questions on ILP services, what's happening with ILP across the state. And so Susan is going to be here so she can answer questions, tell you what's happening. And again, those of you who are in Part C that are part of ECN, she knows who you are, so that if you want to help her out, she'll probably tag team you. So just to let you know.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. Have a wonderful October, Halloween. Woo! And we'll see you all in November. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I probably should go now, but I just thought I'd hang out.
You're always welcome. You're always welcome.
We'll see how long we can all stay on without who's the last person that's gonna leave.
I just have to
I don't
laugh at
shut it
that.
off until the last person leaves in case somebody has questions.
Oh, we'll be here till 2. Yeah, I'm just kidding. Bye.
Bye, Red. Have a good week. Tiffany, I'm so happy to see you.
I
Oh my
was just
goodness.
gonna say that I think like one of the last times I came into Anchorage for Thread, I had just gotten my little foster son that
Yeah.
day, and I just adopted him on September 5th.
No, you